Great Reset is an idea put forward by the World Economic Forum to fundamentally restructure the global economy in the wake of COVID-19. But what are some of the dangers inherent in this ideology? Joining me to discuss is Douglas Kruger, who's a speaker and author focusing on political correctness. Douglas, could you tell our viewers, what is this idea of the Great Reset exactly, and what are some of the risks attached to it?
Like many of the politically correct ideas that we hear bandied about in the media, this entire project is couched in kindness. It is presented as something that is being done or being proposed for our good and for the greater good. And that always sets my alarms and sensors going, because that tends to lead to very problematic ideology. In a very quick nutshell, the proposal out of Davos is essentially this: a group of exceptionally powerful individuals, predominantly in the banking, finance, and business sector, in alliance with government leadership, are proposing that as a result of these COVID lockdowns that have done a great deal of damage to economies globally, they perceive that they now have an opportunity to rebuild economies, but to do so in what they believe is a more enlightened fashion. And there are generally speaking, there are problems with the idea of groups of people in power deciding the history of humanity. In a best case scenario, we are simply supposed to be free to determine our own futures, our own progress, what we want out of life. Now, in this particular case, what they're proposing is a sort of collectivist idea that takes personal ownership out of the equation. The little phrase, and it sounds so innocent, is "you will own nothing and you will be happy." Now, if you go back just several hundred years, the founding father and first president of the United States, which was essentially a project founded on the idea of human liberty and freedom, pretty much for the first time in modern history, George Washington said, "There is no such thing as personal human rights without property ownership." And he said that for several very interesting and important reasons. But the principle is sound. If you are dependent on a greater power for everything, then you are not free. You place yourself as an individual in quite a precarious situation. It was, in fact, the formula for living, the sort of political reality for most of human history. If you look back at a simple setup like the serfs of Europe, this is a group of people who owned nothing and simply contributed to the overlord who determined what they could and could not have. And they had zero rights. It is the property that you own that actually ensures your rights to a great degree. So while this may sound like a very enlightened idea, sort of a communal, collectivist utopia, there are many problems with this once you start thinking about how it might actually be implemented. And that's what concerns me.
So Douglas, is there a risk here that we could see an encroachment of state power into the lives of ordinary individuals and essentially a kind of creeping tyranny that takes hold?
Well, economist and historian Dr. Thomas Sowell makes a very interesting point about how humans evaluate political systems. And he says we make the terrific mistake of evaluating them based on their kindly sounding intentions before the fact, rather than on their outcomes after the fact. And he proposes the idea that our world, our politics would look very different if we had to judge each thing that politicians and governments try based on the outcomes instead of the intentions. At the intention stage, it is remarkably easy for smooth politicians to stand up and say kindly sounding things. Now, the sorts of things that we're hearing from Davos and from the likes of the proponents of the Great Reset all talk about collectivist and communal living and how nobody will own anything. But now consider for just a second, that is already a fallacy. Someone, somewhere, has to own. And in fact, what happens is, if you take ownership out of the hands of a broad-based populace and of many separate entrepreneurs and families and individuals, and you concentrate it into the hands of, say, a few multinational corporations working together with government, well, firstly, that system is by definition fascistic. This idea of an all-powerful government and the businesses that work in conjunction with them. It leads very quickly to cronyism, to the types of corruption that we see, particularly in South Africa, where we are so keen on talking about business and government collaborating. And doesn't that just sound like such a good thing? Business and government collaborating. What happens there is you have the people who own the rules, enforce right and wrong, and have a financial incentive to be corrupt, working with the people who have the money and have an incentive to corrupt them. It's a dreadful formula just to begin with. However, what concerns me is perhaps on a bigger scale than that. When we talk about collective ownership, we are often told that the great thing about it is that everybody will own. The reality of the thing is that nobody but those in power own. And that impulse to take away private property ownership and to concentrate it into the hands of a representative government is purely Marxist. I mean, it is the heart and soul of the Marxist idea, which stripped down to its basics is nobody owns property, it is collectively owned. And as I say, of course, the fallacy there is that it is not actually collectively owned, it is owned by those in power. Now, what can go wrong with that? Well, if we look at modern day China, we get a very good example of this one. Modern day China, of course, a bit of a mixed economy. They have prospered to the degree that they've started permitting free trade. However, they are still very much a Marxist society, and they work according to social credit scores. And social credit scores imposed by law represent a very chilling idea. Now imagine this, for example, you as a family do not own your home, you do not own what is around you, you do not own your business. The government has absolute control because they are the representative of collective ownership. Now imagine a scenario in which you do something that the government does not approve of. You read a book that it doesn't want you to read. You write an essay or an article that it doesn't like. You create a YouTube video commenting on something in a negative way. Now, those are all things that productive human beings do to critique and build and grow their society. But you can't do it there. And if you do something that the government disapproves of, using these social credit scores, they can ghost you. They can effectively lock you out of your world. And it works because you don't own anything. It is that ownership, that broad-based private ownership, that keeps people free from government tyranny. Maggie Thatcher from the UK very famously embarked on a project to expand human liberty in her nation by trying to ensure as much broad-based private and individual ownership of property as possible. In that, she was in agreement with George Washington, who said that it is property rights that prop up human freedom. You can go into great depth and philosophy on this one. You can even take property rights down to the level of your thoughts. Are you free to own them? Are you free to express them? Or is the realm of thinking controlled by a collective? Now, of course, all that sounds, it sounds like terrible fear-mongering. But of course, the question for anyone who looks back over history is to ask, could it happen here? Could it happen again? And I think if you do know your history, the answer is it happens surprisingly easily and it happens surprisingly often. When communities play with this idea of collectivist ownership, I would argue that it happens 100% of the time. And that when we're talking about collective ownership and the elevating of the group over the sanctity of the individual, we are dealing with a formula that has been deeply damaging to the human species.
So Douglas, what about the threats to the property that we already own? Is there a risk there that we might lose our ownership over our existing property?
David, that's an excellent question, and it's one that I think people are not considering. Now, think again of those words. You will own nothing, and you will be happy. It doesn't allow for you will continue to own what your family has bequeathed down the generations. The simple statement, if we are to take them at their word, is you will own nothing, and you will be happy. Now, that poses some fascinating problems in terms of what communities already own. We largely around the world, we own our homes. We bequeath heirlooms, family heirlooms to the next generation. You might own a wedding ring. You might own things that you want to give on to your children. And I would argue that that is one of the very best things that we do. Each generation tries to uplift the next generation. This philosophy seems to be saying, instead of doing that, we reset each generation at zero and leave you dependent on a government welfare system. Now, from the most basic human perspective, that strikes me as deeply unhealthy. If the best thing we do is to raise up our children and help them to go further than us, then starting at zero with government dependency every generation, it strikes me as a bit of a chilling idea. If you look at basic stats, human stats, around groups of people living on welfare, you will find that you have disproportionate rates of marital breakup, of family breakup, of alcohol and drug abuse, and of interpersonal violence. The stats are way different to people who are self-sufficient, self-sustaining, employed, or running their own businesses. So one of the things that I think people are not considering here is, under a paradigm in which nobody owns anything, we all become a group of people living under the welfare state. And it seems to me that that is a very good way to do damage to the health and to the psyche of human beings. We don't seem to prosper under such conditions. I concede very readily that we have to help the poor and the struggling among us. I mean, that is a Christian, a Judeo-Christian principle. It has been built into Western classical thinking for a very long time. But a welfare state in which you don't do anything, but you live dependent on the government, seems to cause human beings to rot. I don't think it's a healthy scenario. We're proposing it on a global scale.
Well, thanks very much, Douglas. I think it's important that we interrogate the dominant narratives that are emerging from global institutions like the World Economic Forum, and to ask ourselves, who are these narratives serving exactly?
Okay, so here's Time Magazine. This is the recent Time Magazine talking about the Great Reset. Okay, so Jonathan Kane, whatever you want to say his name.
Conman. I mean, sorry.
Yeah, Jonathan Conman. He was pushing the Great Shemitah, the year of the Jubilee.
Yeah.
What it is every 7 years through from the beginning of time.
Yeah.
Every 7 years there was a reset. It was a forgiveness of your debts.
Mm. But it wasn't per se for the Jews. It was for the Israelites. Yeah.
Right.
It was adopted by the Jews.
Right. None of this is for the Gentiles.
Yeah. No, it weren't for the Gentiles.
No, this is only for the Israelites. And you know what? Before we go any further, I want to put the disclaimer up.
Yeah, put the disclaimer up so that was, you know.
Yeah, before I go any further, I'm going to put this disclaimer. You're going to be hearing us talk tonight about the Jews, the JEWS. This is not the biblical descendants of Abraham. We are referring to the synagogue of Satan from Revelation 2:9 and 3:9, the Ashkenazi, the Khazars, who are the Zionist controllers of the world. So when you hear us talk about the Jews, we are not talking about the seed of Abraham. We are not talking about God's chosen.
Yeah.
Do not get that twisted. Do not call us anti-Semitic, because the people we are talking about aren't Semitic at all.
Mm.
Okay. We want to make that perfectly clear before we go any further. Okay.
Right.
So
now we've got that out of the way.
Hmm?
Now that we've got that out of the way.
Right. So that being said.
Yeah.
Okay. So, basically, how the financial system was set up is that when you are loaned money, you are not to be charged interest.
No.
And what this means is that the system that we're under now is under these people here, okay?
Mm.
And these people here have been thrown out of how many countries, Robbie? Do you get the number 39?
200 have been thrown out of
239?
239 countries, some of them more than once.
Right.
I'm not just
So
going by memory.
these people go into these countries and they set up banking policies, banking systems that end up being corrupt,
mm-hmm.
that end up stealing from the people and end up enslaving the people. And they've been thrown out of 200 plus countries throughout time for this practice of basically robbing people. Now, I have so much here, so give me a second. Nope.
And this isn't a conspiracy theory, it's a historical fact.
Okay. The financial system we're under now today is through the IMF, the International Monetary Fund or Foundation, the Federal Reserve, and the World Banks. And they are owned by these people. And you're going to recognize some names and some names you aren't going to recognize. But Goldman Sachs, Rockefellers, the Lehmans, the Kuhn-Loebs, the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, the Lazards, and the Israel Moses Sykes of Rome. Now,
Isn't Morgan Chase Stanley on there?
no.
Okay.
This is the big guys. Think of the pyramid of power. These guys sit at the top. Those other ones all sit at the bottom. They sit below them. Chase, all those other names. Okay. Warburg of Hamburg, Germany. Warburg was one of the originals. The Warburg family was one of the originals that was at Jekyll Island. And it was interesting that he was even at Jekyll Island because he was an immigrant from Germany. He didn't even have his American citizenship yet when he was in this meeting setting up the banking system for a country that he was an immigrant in and had no business having anything to do with the financial construction of that country. Okay. Now, every single one of these people, Goldman Sachs, Rockefellers, Lehmans, the Kuhn-Loebs, the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, the Lazards, and the Sykes, are all these people. They're Jews in the sense of what people want to think they are today, but they're not. They're the fake Jews, the synagogue of Satan. So let me ask you guys a question. Do you honestly think that anybody who is under the umbrella of the synagogue of Satan is going to forgive your debt without something in return?
Basic universal basic income, which I've been banding about quite often and quite recently, and now it seems to be the buzzword behind the scenes.
Yes. So tonight we are going to touch on, because it's interesting that just one topic of conversation, the Gesara and Nesara, could bring us. Now I want you guys to listen to my list. And I want you, Robbie, because I know you're going to know this. I want you guys to tell me in the chat room what all of these things have in common. You ready?
Yeah.
The Talmud, the Noahide laws, Nesara, Gesara, Universal Basic Income, Galactic Federation of Light, and the Federal Reserve. What they all have in common?
Go on.
They are all under the satanic, Luciferian New World Order.
There you go.
It was funny that I started researching the Nesara, Gesara, and where it led me down. And I'm going to pull up. I have so many. I want you guys to notice key words when we look at some of the articles. This one is from 2009. No matter how eager we are to know when Gesara will arrive, everyone among the 2012 Ascension team of spirit teachers, ascended masters, celestials, and galactics have kept the exact date under wraps. They offer us hints, glimpses, and suggestions, but that is all. Why would the Galactic Federation of Light, a known Luciferian organization, group, cult, why would they be so interested in Nesara arriving?
Because it's going to be the policy of the saviors that are coming, you know, the alien saviors that are coming from whichever star system that they're supposedly coming from, which actually begs the question: if they're coming from spaceship to come from another star system and another planet to come to save us and the new from whatever, yeah, how are they going to get here? Yeah, and they
Right.
can't come by spaceship because space is fake. Yeah, according to the Bible, over the firmament is covered by water. So how are they getting here by boat? Because they aren't
Exactly.
coming by spaceship, right? Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. We get all these channelers telling us that the great saviors, the galactic saviors, the Galactic Federation of Light, yeah, are telling us that these alien saviors are coming to save us from the New World Order with their version of the New World Order, yeah, to bring their alien messiah, Santanza or whoever. Right? How are they getting here? Right? Because they ain't getting through the firmament, right? Because the Bible is very clear about the composition of this world. So whatever is supposed to be coming is already here. This is what people don't seem to understand. This is the great deception that people are, you know, if you believe in space travel and the going to the moon and all that, yeah, and the space station, and we're going out to Mars and all that, yeah, and you truly believe that, then good luck to you, because that is part of the deception. The other part of the deception is what we're talking about, the Galactic Federation of Light, yeah. I mean, you've seen all the documentaries. Did you not see the documentaries as well? Yeah, I think we saw it on the God, which one was that one? The one about the fallen angels, the one with our man Gons. You know, what's his name? What's his channel? Huh?
Who?
You know Gons. He got what's his
Oh,
channel?
A Face Like the Sun.
Face Like the Sun. Yeah, did he not do the section about the channelers?
Absolutely, we did. Absolutely, we did.
Yeah, and I can't remember the name of the entity that was possessing the person back in the 70s and 80s. Oh, it was just weird. It was really weird, but
We might run across that. I think I don't know if I've got literally almost like 28, 29, 30 tabs pulled up for us. We may not get to everything tonight, but each one of these I will put in the description area.
But they did talk about Galactic Federation of Light.
Yeah.
Yes, in depth.
Yep. So up on the screen, this is important. Okay. So it says, when under Gesara and Nesara, you will own nothing and you'll be happy about it. How many times has Robbie told us that what's coming is everything you've wanted? Right?
Everything that you've ever dreamed of having will be laid at your feet. You will be offered the keys to your own life. You will be given a forgiveness of debt. You might be in tens of thousands of pounds worth of debt, dollars, doesn't matter, right? Or euros, don't matter, yeah? You could be up to your eyeballs in debt, yeah? We're not going to forgive it all, yeah? You want to own your own home? Yeah, go on, yeah, we'll pay off your mortgage, yeah? You want a car? Yeah, well, maybe we could chuck that in. Maybe we'll give you an incentive, yeah? Whatever it is that you want, yeah, they'll give it to you, yeah? But what much is given, much is asked for in return, unfortunately. There's no such thing as a free lunch in this world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah? Oh, yeah.
So this says you will own nothing. You'll be happy about it. Instead, you'll rent everything you need and it'll be delivered by drone right to your door. The U.S. won't be the world's leading superpower. Instead, a handful of countries will dominate together. Now, I want to show you something. Remember that, keep that thought, because look at this. A handful of countries will dominate together. Trump is laying groundwork for a new world order built around the US, China, and Russia.
Yeah.
China being the dragon, Russia being the bear, and the United States being Babylon.
Yeah. Well, in effect, it's all Babylon. It's all Babylon. But America, the daughter of Babylon.
Right, the whore of Babylon. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Let me put this back up on the screen. You won't die waiting for an organ donor. Rather than transplanting organs from deceased donors, custom organs will be 3D printed on demand. You'll eat much less meat.
Mm.
This was, I thought, was interesting because we're going to get into the Noahide laws. And the Noahide laws actually talk about do not eat from a live animal. Oh, my goodness.
Right.
Isn't that the same thing, guys?
Right.
Look at this. You'll eat much less meat. Well, look at the
I'd rather
Noahide.
Well, I'd rather eat from a dead one than a live one, but yeah, I'll see where it's going.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And these Noahide laws, guys, they have consequences if you break them. Don't forget that. We're going to get into that. Let's see. Here's the next one. Gotta wait till it comes up here.
See, the last one on that list. The last one on that list intersects with the what's it called? The Georgia Guidestones.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
To create courts creating fair laws. Get rid of useless officials.
Yep. Polluters will have to pay to emit carbon dioxide. Okay. Polluters will have to pay to emit carbon dioxide. Now, I want you guys to remember that the goal of the elite is to get the carbon footprint down to 0. And I told you guys, I reminded you guys this the other night. We are carbon-based beings. We have a carbon footprint by just breathing. In order to get the carbon footprint down to 0, absolute 0 on this planet, on this Earth, you have to take the population down to 0.
Or near close to.
Or near close to, right.
Yeah.
Depopulation.
Yeah.
Georgia Guidestones.
Yeah.
Get the population down to a manageable 500 million. Do the math. Do the math.
Agenda 21 to Agenda 2030.
Agenda 2030. Yes. Doing the math on the Georgia Guidestones to get us down to a manageable 500 million. Yeah. We would have to take our population down by about between 80 and 90%.
Which is the complete opposite of what Ahia said. Be fruitful and multiply.
Go out
and replenish the earth.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay. So, Nesara and Gesara. As I was looking for it.
Right.
Look what I ran across.
Oh dear. Oh boy. Oh boy. The Galactic Federation, New Republic, Nesara, Gesara, Endless Prosperity. There you go. There's that Galactic Federation again.
Right. And endless prosperity. The government, the government wants you to take this universal basic income. Basically, what you're doing is that you're giving up every shred of freedom, dignity, and humanity in order to be forgiven your debt under Nesara and Gesara. They will give you a basic income. And that's what they mean, a basic income.
Yeah. Just enough to survive on.
Just enough to survive on.
Yeah.
And if we see what is what is coming down the pike here with this whole CV21 that we believe is coming, people are going to be locked in their homes. If you work from home, hey, great for you. But what about all those millions of people that don't have that luxury of working at home? What about all those businesses that are going to go out of business because people don't or can't come out, It says right here, you pull it back up, that right here, you'll be happy about, instead you'll rent everything you need and it'll be delivered by drone right to your door. So you won't even be allowed to leave your homes.
Nope. Because there'll be another drone floating about watching you coming out your house.
Right.
Yeah. You see, anybody that survives the culling right, of the first or whatever 2 or 3 phases of the Cullens that will come in, yeah, right, those that would be considered lucky enough to enter this brave new world will be in a home where every room in your house will have a camera installed in it, yeah, even in the bathroom they'll be watching you go to the toilet, yeah, and having a shower, right. You won't be able to go anywhere without being seen, right? So if you go outside, you'll be seen, right? If you don't have permission to go outside, the police won't be turning up to put you in a whatever to ask you questions. Yeah, the cameras outside, right, on the 5G systems will always automatically find your account, right? Because basically you will have a social credit score, right? So if your social credit score goes below a certain number, you will be excluded from certain things, like maybe say electricity, or maybe food, yeah, maybe I don't know, whatever, yeah, whatever activity that you cherish, that'll be taken away from you for a certain period of time until you've actually accumulated uh, social credit scores up to the whatever acceptable level that they feel is necessary for you to function. Yeah, we're talking about brave new world territory, and it's not a far off fantasy. This is what they're doing right now in China. Right now, China is the beta test. If you remember going back months and months and months ago when we were talking about the what was going on with COVID, right, with this CV-19 that was coming out of China, I already said that China is the beta test for the New World Order. Yeah, it's not separate from the world. It's part of the New World Order. Always has been. Yeah, all these nations are all they're all confederate. Psalms 83, pull out your Bibles, yeah. Psalms 83 tells you that all these nations are in confederate with each other. Basically, they are in collusion. The New World Order, the One World Order, will not work without all these nations working together. It doesn't matter if they go to war with each other tomorrow. Yeah, it doesn't matter. That's just the game. Yeah, that's for your benefit, just to keep you interested. Yeah, together they are working behind the scenes to put all the nuts and bolts together. How do you think that they managed to build a whole city called Astana? Did you 4, 5, 6 years ago? Did you even hear about that city? Did you know about its existence? No, they've built it from the ground up, and they're all working. They've all been working together. Russia, China, Israel, America, Great Britain, Saudi Arabia, all the major countries are all working together to build up these ghost cities. China have built these cities. There's cities all around the world with nobody there. Why have they built these cities? Well, we'll find out, won't we?
Yeah. Well, we have our theories on, the reason for these cities being built. All of them sound absolutely ridiculous and absurd, but in the same sense, you know what we're talking about today, 10 years ago would have sounded absurd. Well, maybe not 10, maybe 20 years ago. So, so talking about that and knowing, here, what we're saying and showing you guys, do you really think that these people here are going to just what? Forgive your debts? Think about the Federal Reserve. Think about the bankers. It's all about the money for them.
Yeah.
It's all about what you can do for them. It's never about what they can do for you. So as Robbie and I have been saying to you guys for forever, is that they're going to be making these things look so good and making them so attractive that you're going to want these things. I can't tell you how many people I have on my social media praising Nesara and Gesara. They can't wait for it. Oh, we're going to be forgiven our debt. No. You know what's going to happen? This right here. It is going to be the complete enslavement of humanity.
Don't worry, I saw it. I saw it on Facebook before I left about all the debt. There was a post about the debt forgiveness. All your debts are going to be forgiven. It's all coming. Yeah, get ready for it. It's like you've got no. What you want about debt forgiveness? You're off your head.
Exactly.
You're absolutely nuts. Do you honestly think that that's really going to happen and it's not for your benefit? Yeah, of course it's going to happen. Yeah, people just, they accept because, the world is built on debt. Yeah, it always has been. Yeah, before I totally woke up, we had the thing in the UK that was introduced called austerity. Yeah, and people were moaning about it, and I said, well, we don't need austerity. The world is built upon debt. All the countries borrow money.
Yeah,
That's how it works.
absolutely.
I obviously understood the monetary system. Yeah, and that's before I'd even done any research about the Rothschild banking system. That came later. Yeah, that was the eye opener. How they gone throughout history and funded every side, both sides at each war since the Napoleonic Wars. And they continue to do it to this day, that they control the whole banking system, that they basically own the world's debt. Yeah. The question was who the world's in so many hundreds of trillions of pounds of debt. Who are they in debt to? Yeah. And then you've got these families like the Rothschilds that have gotten in excess of $500 trillion. That's a lot of money to own. Why would you need all that money? Well, we know why they need that money, because they need to fund the projects of the New World Order. One of them will be the forgiveness of debt, not just people, but whole countries. That takes a lot of money.
Exactly. How many times have you, before you left social media or Facebook, how many times have you heard people talking about free energy technology?
Oh, it was quite a lot, yeah. But we already know about free energy technology, where it came from, who stole it, yeah.
Tesla. Yep.
Yeah, who stole it? Yeah.
U.S. government.
Yeah, on his death, who came and took all his belongings?
That would be Uncle Trump.
Was it grandfather Trump or uncle?
His uncle.
His uncle. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And who did he give it to? Gave it to the FBI. Yeah.
Well, the government came in and they took Tesla's papers. There was probably about 30 boxes of papers, and the government had it first, but they couldn't decipher it. They needed an engineer to come in and take a look at it and tell them what it was. So they gave the 30 boxes to Trump's uncle, Uncle John.
Yeah.
John had it for I don't know how long he had it for. He had it for quite a while. Sifted through it, gave them back 15 boxes, and said there was nothing in there that we can use.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
So when you're
sorry, a pig just flew past the window.
What did?
A pig. Sorry. You should have seen it, man.
Yeah, so when you see free energy technologies that are going to be promised to people, oh, we're gonna make your life so good. We're gonna forgive your debt. We're gonna give you free money. You're gonna, Lord. What is the old saying? If it looks too good to be true, it usually is.
Yeah. And what are the Q posts been saying for years and now? That Trump's going to be releasing news about new technologies, about free energy, and also cures to cancer, cures for AIDS, HIV, AIDS, cures to a lot of diseases that have been suppressed by the elite. Do you think that's by coincidence? Do you think that's by chance? No. Is it him that's going to release it, or is it going to be the upcoming world leader?
Right. I have a video I want you guys to listen to. It's about 6 minutes long. I want you to pay close attention to what he's saying. He's kind of hard to understand. He's got a foreign accent, but it's important.
Hello everyone, how are you? I'm Celso, I'm light worker, and this is Galactic Federation project. We are here spreading news and the messages directly from the Galactic Federation. And we have today a special very, very important message. It is related about the Nesara Gesara government system, right? It is very important for our life. The Nesara Gesara government system. And first of all, what is this? Nesara Gesara is a purpose, is a project to install a unique government on humanity on planet Earth. I know it is very, suppose that it is very crazy, a unique government. All right, because we have too many cultures, you have too many races and conflicts. You know, a unique government about US and Russia, I think it is impossible at the third dimension. But at the fifth dimension, it is very possible, simple possible. And the Nesara Gesara will develop this for us. Nesara Gesara can develop this for us, you know? So, this is the point. The information is at the fifth dimension. The government system will be Nesara Gesara. All right. And the good news is the Nesara Gesara, the fifth dimension will happen very soon. Very soon. As I told you before, the transition has begun. Only babies from the fifth dimension are born. Got it? No babies from the third dimension are born anymore. No more. So,
if the Galactic Federation of Light is telling you that the new system has begun and it's a good system and it's going to be the system of government, and this information has come down from the Ascended Masters, you know that this is straight from who?
So recently, the founder of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, aka the man behind the Great Reset, has stated that 2022 is the year of the Great Reset. But what if I were to tell you that the Great Reset is only the beginning of something much bigger that's right around the corner? Just like how in the sport of boxing, a true professional will never go for the knockout blow first. There's always a setup to that shot, like a jab. And as a matter of fact, the most popular combination in boxing is the 1-2, which is the jab, and then the cross, which is the knockout blow. Now in 2022, our opponent will indeed throw the jab, and that we all know as the Great Reset. However, there is something that will follow that is much more powerful that could potentially serve as the knockout blow. Just like how in chess, a checkmate is often unexpected. So in this video, we'll be covering what that knockout blow is and the 3 things that are on the horizon right now that could happen in 2022 that will set up that 1-2 shot. Now, of course, at this point, we all know that the Great Reset is an agenda created by the World Economic Forum to reset our entire global economy and politics to be controlled by a centralized government with the tagline we all heard by now: you will own nothing and you will be happy. But now there is something that will follow the Great Reset, the knockout blow, if you will, and it's being called the Great Narrative. So what is this Great Narrative? Well, according to the World Economic Forum website, the Great Narrative is a collaborative effort of the world's leading thinkers to fashion long-term perspectives and co-create a narrative that can help guide the creation of a more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable version of our collective future. Top thinkers from a variety of, oh gosh, sorry, I fell asleep. Just a lot of fancy schmancy words, but it says and continues on by saying the reflections will be shared in a forthcoming book, The Great Narrative, expected for publication in January 2022. So they're writing a book now. I wonder where they got that from. Now, according to another page by the WEF website, the Great Narrative is pretty much a how-to guide in terms of how the Great Reset and the process it will be implemented. Well, from their perspective at least. Our perspective looks a little different. So in going back to the boxing analogy, it seems that 2022 is going to be a pivotal year for the Great Reset and also the Great Narrative. And I anticipate the jab coming in 2022. And I have 3 predictions on how this is going to happen, so let's go ahead and start with number 1, which is that this could very much be the year in which we see the early stages of implementation of a national social credit system. So for those that might not be as familiar with a social credit system, well, according to an article written by The Hill, a social credit system is a combination of both government and business surveillance that gives citizens a score that can restrict the ability of individuals to take action such as purchasing plane tickets, acquiring properties, or taking loans because of behaviors. Now, obviously, it's been made famous because of China, but a lot of people may say that America in a million years will never adopt this. Well, that's interesting because in the same article written by The Hill, PayPal announced a partnership with the left-wing Southern Poverty Law Center to investigate the role of white supremacists and propagators of anti-government rhetoric. Subjective labels that could potentially impact a large number of groups of people using their service. PayPal says that collected information will be shared with other financial firms and politicians. And it continues on by saying, Facebook is taking similar measures, recently introducing messages that ask users to snitch on their potentially extremist friends, which, considering the platform's bias, seems to mainly target the political right. At the same time, Facebook and Microsoft are working with several other web giants and the United Nations on a database to block potential extremist content. And well, chances are right below this screen that I'm talking to you in is this little guy right here. Now, a lot of people at this point may say, I would totally stand up to a social credit system. That isn't right. Just like how a lot of people for some reason today are saying that they would have never supported the Nazis if they were living during those times. Well, there's a famous quote that says, history never repeats itself, but it sure does have its patterns. Because let me ask you this. Imagine if there was a mandate for all of those who are not vaccinated to be quarantined into these special camps, and it would improve the overall health and the betterment of our society, and it was only temporary. Well, how many people would 100% support that? My theory is there would be plenty of people who would support it. Or even the other way around. Imagine if there was a mandate that those who were vaccinated weren't allowed in certain stores and they were being made fun of. How many people would support that? I'd say same story. Of course, the main point is that perhaps we're not that far off from a national social credit system being implemented in America, which will eventually lead to a great reset and a great narrative. And this is what brings us to point number 2 in what can happen this year, which is economic stagflation and the progression of universal basic income. Now, real quick, for those of you that may not be familiar with stagflation, stagflation is characterized by slow economic growth and relatively high unemployment, or economic stagflation, which at the same time is accompanied by a high rate of inflation. Now, first and foremost, any person, whether or not you have an economics degree, can probably tell you that inflation is much higher than the reported 7%. I mean, the dollar store has become the $1.25 store. And even rappers nowadays, they're not even making it rain anymore. They're making it hail. You know, because it's coins, not dollar bills. Now, when you look at the potential scenario for economic stagflation in 2022, it's the perfect storm for one thing: more and more Americans getting into debt. And if you remember, the elimination of personal debt is one of the carrots being dangled in front of my eyes and your eyes for us to come on board for this great reset and the great narrative. Now, of course, the real irony is that they're already making money off of our debt anyways, so I guess they win either way. And well, what this may lead us to is perhaps universal basic income, especially in a scenario where wages don't go up, the economy doesn't grow, and well, inflation continues to rise. Now, 5 months ago, we put out a video predicting that UBI will go beyond the state of California to perhaps states like my home state of Illinois and also New York. Now, my mind immediately goes to, well, how long before states like New York and of course my home state of Illinois? Now, first off, wow, my skin looks way better during the summer. But also, to nobody's surprise, the state of New York announced that they will have its first taste of universal basic income in 2022. As a matter of fact, according to an article written by The Sun, the CRNY program will provide $125 million over 3 years for up to 2,700 artists in New York State. The funds are allocated towards UBI and employment opportunities for artists across the state. Now, I get it. It's only for a small select group of individuals and it's not statewide. Not yet anyways. But remember, the jab, no pun intended, comes before the knockout blow. And really, how long before it gets issued statewide? I mean, there's other places that have announced that they will introduce UBI in the year 2022, places such as Rochester, Durham, and different parts of New Jersey. And if we were right about this and predicted it 5 months ago, well, what's going to happen in 12 months? And why wouldn't we be right, at least about the direction of this? Now, quite frankly, this is what they want. For stagflation to get everyone into debt, and for UBI to start getting more and more popular. And this creates a situation where the perceived ideal solution is for us to exchange our liberty and our freedom for security and elimination of debt. A situation where we will own nothing and we will be happy. Now, with that said, a lot of people, especially in my generation, still believe that concepts such as socialism and communism, where the government controls the means of production and distribution, are good things. And they imagine a world where everyone's nice to each other and no one's poor and everything is sunshine and rainbows. Well, 5 months ago, we used the story of two countries that used to be one, but were split because one country believed in capitalism, my home country of South Korea, which by the way is still top 10 economy in the world, and of course the other side of capitalism, North Korea. But let's not talk about North Korea, because well, there are a few people who had an issue with that analogy. Let's talk about the other 3 socialist countries in the world not named China. So let's start with Laos, which by the way ranks 112th in terms of nominal GDP economic growth, and is also considered one of Asia's poorest countries in a research paper done by UNISCEP. Then we move on to Cuba, which ranks 62nd in nominal GDP economic growth, and while despite having one of the most strategically advantaged locations for business and trade, has nearly half of all households living in the country living below the poverty line. And then last but not least, we have the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, which by the way, did not even experience economic growth until 1986 when the country started pushing for private ownership. And nationwide commerce and agriculture started being dictated by free market principles and not a centralized government. And well, this led to the US lifting a former trade embargo set on Vietnam in 1994. Now with that said, let me say this. My intent is not to disrespect any of these countries. However, I do believe that the socialist economic frameworks that they have adopted over the years have done way more damage to their country and their citizens. Which, by the way, if you're still one of these individuals who disagrees with me, well, comment down below and tell me why. And last but not least, this is what leads us to point number 3, which is that the World Economic Forum will be meeting under the Davos agenda this year in 2022. And I mean, well, this is pretty much the most straightforward thing that could be done in this year to bring on the Great Reset and the Great Narrative. And as a matter of fact, the World Economic Forum will be meeting for the Davos agenda early this summer under the banner, working together to regain trust. I wonder if there's anything that I or like a British comedian may have said that make you not trust him anymore.
It's Davos week, the Great Reset.
Now, the Davos agenda was initially scheduled for this week of January 17th till January 22nd. But because of this new variant, they postponed their meeting to early summer, which I don't know, I find a bit ironic. Now, of course, there'll be lots to unpack between now and then, and certainly way more to unpack in the aftermath of the Davos agenda for the rest of 2020.
might be beneficial to dig a little bit deeper to find out the background of the organization that is going to be potentially shaping the future that we live in, to find out if there is a trail that leads us directly to the people that might be actually benefiting from the story that they're trying to sell us. So let's do that. One thing that I'm sure we can all agree on is that the WEF has tremendous amounts of power, and we seem to see their messages just about everywhere. They have celebrities such as Prince Charles, Leonardo DiCaprio, Bono as their spokespeople, and they seem to have a never-ending supply of money that is there to advertise their agendas. So where is this money and power all coming from? This might be where the issue lies with the WEF. According to both Wikipedia and the WEF themselves, the World Economic Forum is primarily funded by its 1,000 member companies. You can find a list of companies on their website, and the members are made up of just about every single massive company that you can think of. Facebook, Goldman Sachs, Walmart, you name it. So the WEF has paying members, and generally when you are part of an organization or a club, what is it that these members get? If you're part of a golf club, the membership fees are there to help with the groundskeeping, the maintenance and the improvement of the golf course. If you are part of a hiking club, the money might be used in order to maintain the hiking trails themselves, to organize the group activities and so on. Your membership fees don't go towards your club doing something for the benefit of others. Almost always, membership fees go towards action that benefit the club members. In this case, the members of WEF are some of the most powerful, most profitable companies in the entire world. Companies that you've definitely heard of. Companies like Amazon that put such stringent delivery requirements on its drivers, they're dehumanized to the point that they've been known to urinate in bottles instead of taking bathroom breaks. Companies like Nestle, who have openly admitted to slavery in their supply chain and can't give guarantees to customers that no slavery was used in the making of their chocolate. Weapons manufacturers like Bay Systems, who have sold billions in arms around the world, including to nations like Saudi Arabia, who have used those weapons to kill thousands of innocent civilians in Yemen. Companies like Apple, who want you to believe they're being environmentally friendly and care about the planet because they recycled materials in their products. Yet at the same time, they have suppliers who have put nets on their buildings to stop employees jumping to their deaths. And oil companies like Chevron, who have been accused of knowingly lying to the public multiple times about the damage they're doing to our planet and for many human rights abuses. These are just a few of the 1,000 companies that fund the WEF, and you can find the extensive list of all of these companies on the WEF website. And as I said, their members make up some of the biggest and most powerful companies on the planet. Companies that seem to care about the profit above all else. Companies that are complicit in the destruction of our planet as long as they make a few extra bucks. And many companies that see people as commodities rather than souls that deserve respect. Now, the WEF wants you to believe that the member money that is being paid to the WEF is not there to benefit the members directly, but more so to help uplift our planet and ensure that the right, great change is made for the planet. And again, remember, on their website, they state that they take action that is independent, impartial, and not tied to any special interests. But now that you are aware of some of the companies that are funding the WEF, do you really believe that the actions are completely independent and impartial? And here we are, the one thing that I believe everybody should keep in mind whenever they hear the messages coming from the WEF. On the one hand, the WEF tells us that they are impartial and a group designed in order to be independent, impartial, and not tied to any specific agenda. In reality, though, it appears that the World Economic Forum is nothing more than this: a lobbying organization funded by some of the most powerful companies on the entire planet. Whenever companies lobby governments or the public directly through special interest groups, it is more often than not there to benefit the companies themselves. History has shown us that companies lobby to get laws written and passed that is going to assist the companies to do the business that they want to be doing. They use PR in order to mold the public's image of themselves, make them look really, really good, whilst they're deflecting us and our view and attention from the really bad things that they are doing in their company.
This is the plan that I have repeatedly warned about: to take the tools of oppression used to tackle the coronavirus and use them all, lockdowns, forced business closures, exclusion zones, isolation. We heard Angela Marsden earlier, businesses shut down, isolation at home, all of that, all of those measures, including destroying private property rights and private income in order to tackle the climate crisis.
Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight the severe virus, but to shape the system.
We have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves on a more sustainable path. It is an opportunity we have never had before and may never have again. So we must use all the levers we have at our disposal, knowing that each and every one of us has a vital role to play.
The Great Reset is a welcome recognition that this human tragedy must be a wake-up call. It is imperative that we reimagine, rebuild, redesign, reinvigorate and rebalance our world. Rebalancing investment, harnessing science and technology, and advancing the transition to net zero emissions, all elements of the Great Reset, are fundamental to building the future we need.
And that last one was the clown Gesara, who was at the Climate Ambition Summit, telling us the world is going to cook by 3.5 degrees or something by the end of the century. Yeah, right. This Great Reset is as serious and as dangerous a threat to our prosperity, to your prosperity and your freedom, as we have faced in decades, with these powerful bodies, including the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, and even Prince Charles boasting, yes, boasting that within a few short years, yes, their words, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Remember, this is not me saying this, this is them. They are even running ads for the Great Reset. A handful of countries will dominate. I wonder which ones they might be. A terrifying coalition of big business, big tech, and left-wing totalitarians are so confident and so brazen. I mean, they just stole the US election, so I guess they're feeling pretty chuffed with themselves, that they are now promising you will own nothing and you will be happy. What they should have added is, and we, the very rich, will own everything and be even happier. Of course they will. The great tragedy here is that Prince Charles is involved in this fascist, corporatist global push and is thereby putting our entire constitutional monarchy at risk. Queen Elizabeth, please give the bloke the punt. It is critical, and I urge you to write to your MPs over the holidays to insist that no Australian public servant or member of parliament, no individual on the Australian public purse attends the World Economic Forum in Lucerne in May, which is where this obscenity is scheduled to begin. Please write to your MPs and tell them. And you think I'm just imagining this stuff? Crazy old Rowan with his conspiracy theories? Think again. This garbage is already deeply embedded into our state and federal governments. I've spoken before about the insidious phrase, build back better, which sounds like common sense, but is in fact just one of several slogans for the Great Reset. Another being the Orwellian phrase, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Here's old Klaus again, minus the white cat on his knee, telling us all about the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
The Fourth Industrial Revolution will impact our lives completely. It will not only change how we communicate, how we produce, how we consume, it will change actually us, our own identity, and of course gives life to such policies and developments like smart traffic, smart government, smart cities. What we will see is that everything will be integrated into an ecosystem driven by big data and driven particularly by close cooperation also of governments with business, civil society. And this revolution will come at a breathtaking speed. It will be like a tsunami.
Like a tsunami in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, you will own nothing, but you will be happy. That is an order. It gets worse. The World Economic Forum are now blatantly saying capitalism needs a dose of Marxism. As I say, it's not like they're hiding their sinister intentions. Indeed, I was horrified when an outsider fan last week sent me this document from the Australian government. Quote, preparing for the future Industry 4.0 test labs in Australia, a strategic initiative of the Prime Minister's Industry 4.0 Task Force. Section 1, Significance of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Unbelievable. So, may I respectfully remind the Prime Minister there is nothing in the Great Reset that is in Australia's national interest. Australians did not vote for a dose of Marxism in our capitalism. Speaking of Marxists, on this show this year, we also brought Dan Andrews' insidious Belt and Road dealings with Communist China to national attention thanks to my exclusive interview with US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, which led, as I predicted last week, to the passing of the government's Foreign Relations Bill. Again, congratulations to the Prime Minister and the government for that one important piece of legislation. If the Prime Minister is true to his words and only listens and answers to the quiet Australians who elected him, then he can comfortably look forward to re-election, possibly even next year. But if he is seduced by the siren voices of the virtue signalers of the international forums, of the global warming alarmists and their doomsday predictions, of the greedy renewable investors within his own party, who fraudulently claim that they are saving the planet when all they are doing is enriching themselves at the expense of the poorest among us. Indeed, if he puts the interests of the elites over the basic everyday interests of the average Aussie, it will not end well. But I am an optimist, and I believe Mr. Morrison understands that Australia rejects the reset.
It's at the end, what the fourth industrial revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
No, mate, not in Australia it won't. Rack off, Klaus.